Acoustic levitation is scientifically possible. In fact, it's a scientific principle that's been demonstrated time and time again. Okay, so in labs in the real world, all we can really see is sound waves being used to raise tiny objects into the air. There's no way that we've discovered to levitate massive rocks like the ones that we used to build the pyramids. So that obviously means it's impossible. Or does it? There are ancient structures all over the world that either consist of lots of enormous stones or one ridiculously large stone that is said to have been moved from another location, cut down to size and then intricately carved. Now all of this is stuff that our modern technology would struggle to replicate. So is it possible then that there might have been an understanding of acoustic levitation? Now of course it's very easy to say through our modern lens that anything that we can't do can't be done, or at least couldn't be done by civilizations that came before us. But interestingly, wherever you look in ancient history, these enormous structures or monoliths often come with tales of civilizations, or in some cases individuals, who seem to have mastered the power of sound and use this skill to help in these magnificent constructions. So let's take a look at some accounts. Abul Hassan Ali al-Masudi. Now he claimed in the 10th century that the Egyptians were visited by beings who brought with them the knowledge of acoustic levitation. They supposedly shared this knowledge with the ancient Egyptians, enabling them to build the pyramids with ease. Now al-Masudi was an Arab polymath with writings on theology, history, geography, the natural sciences and philosophy. So he certainly knew what he was talking about. But how reliable is his account of the construction of the pyramids? Well, as I said, he did much of his work in the 10th century. And if we take the construction date of the pyramids to be around 2500 BC, then he would have missed it by more than 3,000 years. And if we use the theory around Orion's belt to date the pyramids, and you can check out the rest of this playlist to learn more about that, then he would have missed it by about 11,000 years. So it's obviously not a first-hand account, which means it's very difficult to use this particular source as fact. And of course, pretty much all accounts of acoustic levitation around the world are ancient stories with no way of verifying them, or are they? One particular story that could support the idea of acoustic levitation is that of Dr. Jarl. Now he was a Swedish doctor who visited a group of Tibetan monks in 1939. Now, it's said that he was taken to their monastery to treat a High Lama who had been suffering from some kind of illness. So he stayed with the monks for some time, developing friendships and bonds with them. Eventually they took him to the bottom of a cliff and showed him a construction project that was ongoing at the top. Now some distance from the edge of the cliff there was what is described as a large stone. Now whether you want to call this science or not, this is where things get a little bit technical. Precisely 63 meters from the stone, 19 musical instruments were set up in a 90-degree arc, including horns and drums. Now the 13 drums were a range of different sizes, but the 6 horns were each exactly 3 meters long. So they started off by playing the drums, and slowly the horns began to join the party, creating one unified wall of sound. Surrounding monks began chanting, and it's said that after 4 minutes, nothing really happened, but then slowly, the stone began to move, kind of gently swaying from side to side. Now this is where it gets kind of crazy. The stone apparently rose up off the ground and was in the air for 3 minutes, getting higher and higher until it landed at the top of the cliff. Now interestingly, Dr. Jarl is said to have recorded 2 separate videos of this event in action. Remember, it was in 1939. But that footage was confiscated by his employer and has been classified ever since. But scientific papers have been written about this phenomena, and conclusions have been drawn regarding Dr. Jarl's experience. We know from the priests of the Far East that they were able to lift heavy boulders up high mountains with the help of groups of various sounds. The knowledge of the various vibrations in the audio range demonstrates to a scientist of physics that a vibrating and condensed sound field can nullify the power of gravitation. So could it be that the ancient Egyptians had a similar knowledge of the power of sound waves? Now just a little side note, I did actually find a video on YouTube of a Tibetan monk supposedly levitating, but there's just something about it that I'm just not sure about. I guess I've probably seen too many magicians over the years claiming to do the same thing. Still, I'm going to put a link in the description below and I'll let you make your own mind up on that one. As I said earlier, we know that acoustic levitation is a thing. Using a series of transducers and reflectors, scientists have been able to levitate small objects, usually just droplets of water or polystyrene balls, simply by focusing a direct and concentrated pulse of sound into the air and placing the object in its path. But this is obviously nowhere near what we're looking at if we're talking about moving massive stones from one place to another with the level of precision needed to build any kind of structure, let alone the pyramids. And if you just dived into into this series at this point and you don't know how insanely precise the pyramids are, then after this, make sure you go and start this playlist from the beginning. You might already think they're amazing, but I'm telling you, nothing will prepare you for some of the things that you will discover. So the fact is, we know how to make things levitate using purely sound. I suppose the biggest question is it possible to scale up the results of experiments in labs to amplify the sound waves so that we're able to construct buildings? Well, it could be. And it might not simply be a case of making as much noise as you possibly can. The discoveries that scientists are making are basically that with a sufficient understanding of phonons, basically what sound is at a quantum level, we can make sound waves themselves rise rather than fall, which is the general understanding, creating a force which ultimately resists gravity. And at this point in time, we don't know whether there are actually any physical limitations in the application of this. There are obviously limitations in what we've been able to achieve with it, but this field is still in its early stages. We're not even close to mastering it. So does that mean that nobody has? Look, there's obviously a chance that Dr. Yar's story from his time in Tibet is a complete fabrication, as well as all the ancient tales which seem to suggest this is a well-established practice. But purely from a sterile, clinical, scientific perspective, there's a chance that it's not. The principles hold up, we just haven't worked out a way of doing it yet. That doesn't necessarily mean there haven't been ancient cultures who had mastered the practice, and in the case of the monks, carried it with them into the modern era. So were the pyramids built using acoustic levitation? Well, as is the case with all theories about the pyramids, we don't know. We have no idea what knowledge and technology the ancient Egyptians had available to them, which is why we can't give an outright no to any theory. But remember, the pyramids of Giza are the only remaining wonders of the ancient world. So one thing is for sure, however they did a pretty good job. If you are new to this series, then make sure you go and check it out from the beginning by clicking on the playlist right here, or to see the next video, just click here, and I'll see you there.